and realized what I was auditioning for. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part.
Crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Why were you crying?
Oh my gosh, I saw.
She was handpicked by Spielberg, crowned with a Golden Globe, and cast as Disney's next princess. But in just 2 years, Rachel Zegler went from Hollywood's golden girl to one of the internet's most ridiculed stars. Her movies flopped, her theater shows emptied out, and her interviews turned into viral PR disasters. Now, the same industry that once called her the future is quietly backing away, and it all started with a single smug sentence. This isn't just a fall from grace, it's a masterclass in how to burn a career down in real time. But how did it happen so fast? There are fast rises in Hollywood, and then there's what happened to Rachel Zegler.
So did you go directly from West Side? Like, did you have to audition for Snow White, or like, oh, they saw you in West Side Story?
In 2018, she was just another teenager scrolling through Twitter when she spotted an open casting call for West Side Story. No agents, no insider connections, just a 17-year-old girl with a phone, a dream, and a voice trained in high school theater. She submitted a video of herself belting out "Tonight" in her bedroom. No professional lighting, no makeup team, just raw talent. And somehow, it worked. Steven Spielberg, the most powerful director in modern film history, saw her tape and didn't just like it. He stopped the search.
Traditional narrative art, closely following the 1937 plot while making space for subtle updates.
Tell me if this is a track that you like. This.
Out of over 30,000 aspiring actresses from around the world, he chose Rachel. In one click, she jumped the line, bypassing the usual industry grind that chews up and spits out young hopefuls. She went from high school hallways to Hollywood sound stages without ever doing background work or minor roles. She was Cinderella, but the glass slipper was a microphone. By the time West Side Story hit theaters in late 2021, the buzz around her was overwhelming. She wasn't just another rising star, she was a phenomenon. Critics fawned over her vocals. Industry insiders called her the next Barbra Streisand. Rachel had barely turned 20 when she won a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a musical or comedy.
Nobody saw this coming. Now, the 23-year-old actress who went from unknown teenager to Golden Globe winner allegedly collapsed while...
The headlines called her the future of cinema. The awards season rolled out its red carpets like they were made for her. And the industry agreed. Before her first movie had even finished its theatrical run, Rachel had locked in not one, but 3 major studio deals. She was cast as the lead in Snow White, Disney's latest live-action remake of a legacy princess. She booked a role in the superhero sequel Shazam! Fury of the Gods. And on top of that, she had landed the title role in the West End's revival of Evita, one of the most iconic musical theater productions of all time. Rachel wasn't just booked. She was everywhere. The dream was real, and it was happening fast.
Her story sparks a deeper conversation. Is Zegler simply a young star caught in the relentless machine of fame, or has her own...
Studios poured money into her branding. Talk shows welcomed her like a prodigy. Social media fawned over her quirky, confident energy. She became the internet's favorite new voice in diversity, in representation, in Hollywood reform. She said all the right things, and for a while, everyone clapped. It was a textbook rise, but something didn't sit right. As Rachel leaned more into the spotlight, her persona began to shift. Her interviews weren't charming anymore, they were pointed. Her posts weren't humble, they were confrontational. Where other stars played the game with poise, Rachel doubled down on bluntness, brushing off criticism with smug responses and viral quips.
Started doing interviews. Instead of celebrating the legacy of the original film, she downplayed it entirely. In one now infamous...
It was no longer about the work, it was about being right, being loud, being noticed. At first, fans defended her. She's just confident, they said. She's young, they reasoned. Give her time. But time did the opposite. The tone changed. Her presence started to wear thin. Her quirky confidence began to sound like arrogance. Her realness started to feel dismissive. The media still propped her up, but the audience, they were quietly slipping away. Because here's the thing about meteoric rises in Hollywood. When you skip the struggle, you miss the humility. You miss the learning curve. You miss the chance to grow before the spotlight hits. And for Rachel, the spotlight came before the lessons did.
Hey, it's all great. I'm honored. I don't know why I sound so angry right now. I'm honored. Am I a psychopath? No, I've been getting a lot of questions.
What began as one of the most promising breakout stories of the decade was already shifting, and no one saw just how fast the fall would be. Playing a Disney princess should have been the easiest win of Rachel Zegler's career. This wasn't just any role, it was Snow White, the crown jewel of Disney's legacy, their first ever feature-length animated film. A global icon, a fairy tale that generations grew up on. All Rachel had to do was smile, sing, and embrace the magic. But instead of honoring that legacy, she took a match to it. In interviews leading up to the film, Rachel didn't just promote the new Snow White. She trashed the old one.
Disney's Snow White has been a box office disaster.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
But listen here as the star, Rachel Zegler.
She called the 1937 original weird, dismissed its love story as creepy, and described the prince as a stalker. And this wasn't said as a passing joke, it was said with a grin repeatedly in multiple press junkets. In one sit-down interview, she proudly declared that in her version, the princess doesn't dream of love anymore. She's not going to be saved by the prince, she said. She's going to become the leader she knows she can be. Now, on paper, that sounds like empowerment. Modern, strong, but in practice, it came across as something else. Disdain. Not just for the source material, but for the fans who loved it.
I actually met Rachel Zegler in New York after her Broadway show performing Romeo and Juliet, and let me just say, I have a couple opinions on her after meeting her.
And fans noticed. Instead of excitement for a bold new take, the internet lit up with confusion, frustration, and anger. People weren't upset that the story was evolving. They were upset that Rachel treated the past like something to be embarrassed about. It wasn't modernization. It was mockery. She wasn't lifting up the legacy, she was looking down on it. And if the backlash had stopped there, Disney might have weathered the storm. But Rachel didn't stop talking. In an Instagram live, she brushed off criticism with a line that would come to define her entire PR spiral. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't need your business, babe.
We are talking yet again about another Disney remake.
No.
Now, a few weeks ago, pictures from the new...
That wasn't just off-brand, it was off-script. This wasn't a gritty indie drama. This was a $200 million Disney movie for families, and the lead actress was telling potential ticket buyers to take a hike. For a studio built on wholesomeness and nostalgia, it was like watching their brand self-destruct in real time. And the damage didn't stop with words. Behind the scenes, Disney had already poured hundreds of millions into the project. Between reshoots, delays, VFX, and marketing, Snow White ballooned into one of the studio's most expensive live-action remakes ever. Industry insiders estimated the total cost at over $600 million.
The spotlight was shining. The orchestra swelled. The stage was set for Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
A staggering sum for a film relying so heavily on public goodwill. But goodwill doesn't survive arrogance. By the time the first trailer dropped, the damage had already been done. Comment sections were flooded with dislikes. YouTube reactions called the film soulless and woke to the point of parody. Even mainstream critics began to tiptoe around the elephant in the room. Rachel wasn't just miscast. She was misaligned with the very soul of the character. Still, Disney pushed forward. They released stills, teasers, behind-the-scenes features. They leaned into representation. They leaned into empowerment.
But to overwrite them. And audiences are pushing back, hard. Snow White has become the symbol of that backlash.
But the harder they leaned, the more people pulled away. Because at the center of it all was Rachel, whose every press appearance added fuel to the fire. Even her co-star Gal Gadot looked visibly uncomfortable during one interview, as Rachel once again dismissed the original film's values. The internet pounced, memes spread, hashtags trended. But this time, it wasn't fun. It wasn't ironic. It was frustration turned full-blown rejection. And then came the silence. Disney stopped scheduling major interviews. Press tours were quietly scaled back. Rumors swirled that executives had told Rachel to stop speaking publicly.
But to overwrite them. And audiences are pushing back, hard. Snow White has become the symbol of that backlash.
The film hadn't even hit theaters yet, and the lead actress had already become a liability. From Disney's brightest hope to its biggest PR headache, Rachel had gone from Snow White to industry warning sign in a matter of months. But as the online backlash mounted, the real storm was still on the horizon. By the time Snow White premiered, the writing was already on the wall, and it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Disney had gambled everything on this film. Behind the scenes, Snow White had become one of the most expensive live-action productions in the company's history. Between production costs, massive rewrites, marketing campaigns, global PR, and damage control.
At the heart of this drama, Storm is Rachel Zegler, whose actions are said to have changed the rules for what it means to be a tough star.
Insiders estimated the total investment at over $600 million. This wasn't just another remake. It was a statement, a legacy play, a corporate crown jewel meant to launch a new generation of stars, with Rachel Zegler front and center. And it bombed. Opening weekend was a disaster. Domestic box office returns came in painfully below projections. Internationally, it was worse. In some markets, it barely registered. In China, a key box office territory, Snow White made less than $1 million. Entire theater chains quietly pulled the film after just 1 week. The once mighty Disney machine had pushed with everything it had, and the world simply shrugged.
Rachel Zegler has reacted to Snow White tanking on Rotten Tomatoes with only a 43% score. Disney's live-action adaptation.
Critics were split. Some praised the visuals, the score, the updated tone, but even the most generous reviews couldn't ignore the central issue. Audiences didn't connect with Rachel. They didn't believe her. They didn't root for her. And worst of all, they didn't like her. And that's a problem money can't fix, because in cinema, star power is everything. You can pour millions into effects. You can rebrand a classic. But if your lead actress turns off the crowd before the lights even dim, it's over before it begins. The numbers told a brutal truth. Snow White didn't just underperform, it actively lost money. Analysts started calling it one of the biggest financial misfires in Disney's modern history.
We're talking over $500 million all in with marketing. But after losing nearly $200 million on Snow White,
insiders whispered that the studio had to shelve other planned remakes, including a Tangled live-action project, because of the financial fallout. But the dollar signs were just surface damage. The real loss was deeper: trust. Audiences didn't just skip Snow White, they rejected it. They turned away from the Disney brand, from its messaging, and from Rachel herself. And this wasn't a case of quiet disinterest. This was organized backlash. Entire threads on Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter were dedicated to calling out Rachel's interviews, her past comments, and her tone-deaf social media presence. She became the face of everything viewers hated about modern Hollywood: preachy, condescending, and out of touch. And suddenly, the Golden Girl became box office poison. PR teams scrambled, media outlets began spinning alternative explanations, blaming internet hate mobs, toxic fan culture, and even generational misunderstandings. But no amount of spin could erase the fact that the public had made up its mind. And Rachel, she didn't exactly help her case. Instead of humility, she doubled down. Instead of softening her approach, she defended it. She gave interviews blaming online trolls and haters.
Rachel Zegler is begging you to like her again.
I never wanted to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunity.
And described herself as a misunderstood artist trying to bring truth to outdated fairy tales. She even referred to herself as a narcissist in a widely circulated magazine feature, an admission that, instead of sounding self-aware, came off like self-sabotage. The backlash wasn't just about one movie anymore, it was about an image, a personality, a perception of someone who had been handed everything and showed nothing but contempt in return. And with Snow White officially labeled a financial failure, the conversation shifted again, from backlash to consequences. What happens when a $600 million bet turns into a $600 million warning?
Rachel Zegler breaks down as Snow White bombs on streaming charts. Rachel Zegler visibly broke down.
After the Snow White collapse, Rachel Zegler needed a win, a big one. Enter Evita, the legendary West End musical based on the life of Eva Peron. It was bold, it was iconic, and it was her chance to prove she was more than just a flopped film star. This wasn't Hollywood. This was theater, her original stomping ground, her supposed safe space, the one place where live performance could let her rise above bad press, bad trailers, and worse tweets. But instead of a comeback, it became a coffin. From the start, Evita was marketed as her redemption arc. Industry headlines teased Zegler's triumphant return to the stage. Interviews hyped her vocal chops.
She was the lead for Disney's live-action Snow White. Well, there was a lot of drama behind her. She said
theaters posted promotional shots of Rachel draped in white silk, looking like a queen ready to reclaim her crown. The buzz was loud, but when opening night came, the audience wasn't. Entire sections of the London Palladium sat empty. Not just nosebleeds, prime seats. Rows that should have been sold out weeks in advance were collecting dust. And this wasn't a one-night fluke. It happened night after night, whole balconies vacant, velvet chairs without bodies. Theater bloggers started whispering, then they started posting. And soon the receipts were everywhere. Screenshots of red seat maps, footage from sparsely attended shows, and worst of all, cancellations.
Rachel Zegler reacts to Snow White being removed from theaters. Disney's Snow White remake has officially crashed, and Rachel's
multiple performances were quietly pulled from the schedule. No announcements, no press releases, just a quiet deletion from ticket platforms. A soft admission that the numbers weren't there, that the star power had burned out. Some insiders tried to spin it. They claimed pre-sales were strong, that the show had secured $4 million in ticket commitments before casting was even announced. But fans weren't buying it. Reddit threads dissected the narrative. People showed up to the official ticketing sites and found hundreds of open seats, not just in the back, but in every section. And if those $4 million in sales were real, one thing was clear. They weren't coming from real fans. Because real fans show up, and they didn't.
Did you notice the cheap Converse hidden under Rachel Zegler's glamorous dress in Evita? No one realized she was actually getting back at Disney.
Even more brutal, the press barely covered it. It wasn't a scandal, it was a shrug. There was no outrage, no protests, no loud culture war arguments, just silence. That's how far the public had moved on. It wasn't anger anymore, it was indifference. And for a performer, that's the real death sentence. Rachel tried to keep it together. She smiled for cameras, she thanked her team. She posted grateful messages on Instagram with photos of herself mid-performance, hoping to drum up support. But the comments were telling: low engagement, low likes. Fans weren't rallying, they were watching from a distance. Then came the breaking point.
See, this is why we can't have nice things.
Due to the recent backlash with the live-action Snow White, development on the live-action Tangled has...
One night in July 2025, during a performance, Rachel abruptly exited the stage midway through Act 1. The show paused. Confusion spread. And when the understudy stepped in, something unexpected happened. The crowd cheered. She got a standing ovation by curtain call, and the next night, Rachel was back, but the buzz had shifted. What should have been her Les Miserables moment turned into a backstage whisper. Was she cracking under the pressure? Health concerns were cited, stress, exhaustion, and illness were mentioned. But fans weren't speculating about her recovery. They were already past caring. Theater critics began to imply what many already believed.
Why is 77-year-old Andrew Lloyd Webber so fond of 24-year-old Rachel Zegler at the recent West End premiere of Evita?
This wasn't about one show. It was about a pattern. And Rachel Zegler had now proven she couldn't carry two stages, Hollywood or West End. The harsh truth. Evita didn't just fail, it confirmed everything audiences had suspected since Snow White, that Rachel's rise was hype without heart. And when the stage went dark, the applause didn't come. Not because people were tired of musicals, not because it was a bad script, not because of rain or timing or bad reviews, but because the public simply didn't want to see her anymore. And when an actress can't fill a theater where legends once stood, it's not a scandal, it's a signal. It wasn't just the movies, it wasn't just the theater.
No one realized that Rachel Zegler's one move helped her pay off the $250 million debt to Disney. Recently, Rachel starred in Evita.
The real backlash didn't come from one role gone wrong. It came from something far more damaging. Rachel Zegler herself. Because in 2023 and 2024, Rachel's public persona became the headline. Not her talent, not her performances, her personality, the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, the way she responded to fans and critics alike, it all started to rub people the wrong way. And she didn't change course. If anything, she doubled down. Where most rising stars tread lightly, Rachel charged forward. She clapped back on TikTok. She dismissed fan critiques with smug replies.
People are really annoyed with Rachel Zegler, but this time for a totally different reason. Throughout the entire movie, she moves her mouth in such a weird way.
When someone commented, "You just lost a fan," she didn't try to win them back. She replied, "You were never one to begin with." It wasn't sass, it wasn't confidence, it was condescension. And it kept getting worse. Rachel began treating every interview like a TED Talk. Instead of promoting her projects, she went on long-winded monologues about politics, identity, and personal empowerment, which would have been fine if it didn't always sound like she was talking at the audience instead of to them. She wasn't just opinionated, she was combative. Take the infamous "I don't need your business, babe" quote. It was during a press tour for Snow White, a movie built for children, nostalgia, and family-friendly messaging.
Okay, I'm not going crazy. I really liked this song when I first heard it, Waiting on a Wish from...
Instead of embracing the brand, Rachel practically spit on it, and on anyone who questioned her decisions. Every soundbite felt like a challenge. Prove you're on her side or get out of the way. And that energy, it didn't disappear, it became her brand. She called herself a narcissist in a magazine interview and laughed about how she's learning to care less what people think. In theory, it sounded like self-love. In practice, it sounded like someone closing herself off from any accountability. Her Instagram captions were soaked in self-congratulation. Her TikTok lives often veered into hot take territory where she'd rant about the industry, politics, or trolls.
Rachel Zegler is panicking, and it's not subtle anymore. After spending a year defending Disney's live-action Snow White, she's now watching the film,
all while telling her followers to choose kindness. It was a contradiction that left even her most loyal fans confused. Because kindness isn't a slogan, it's how you treat people. And Rachel had stopped treating people, especially her audience, with anything close to kindness. Worse, her tone wasn't consistent. It shifted depending on the moment. One day, she'd be posting tearful reflections on anxiety and burnout. The next, She'd be snapping at commenters and telling critics to touch grass. It created a whiplash effect. Was she vulnerable or invincible? Was she humble or hostile?
Bonuses deleted.
I am flooded with like a flurry of different emotions, and I can't figure out what's real and what's not.
Fans didn't know anymore. And when people don't know what version of you they're getting, they stop showing up. Even other celebrities began pulling back. During a joint interview with Snow White co-star Gal Gadot, Rachel launched into a tirade about the original film being outdated and problematic. Gal stood silently next to her, visibly uncomfortable. The clip went viral, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. The body language, the tone, the sheer certainty in Rachel's voice. It was less press tour and more lecture. She wasn't promoting the film, she was correcting it. Like the audience had been wrong for enjoying the original in the first place.
How do you feel about the whole Snow White thing and not hiring LPs to do the job? Let's go.
And that tone, it followed her everywhere. When asked about her role in Shazam, Fury of the Gods, she didn't praise the story or the cast or even the opportunity. She just said, I needed a job. That was it. No gratitude, no excitement, no awareness that millions of actors would kill for a role in a $100 million superhero film. Just a casual, bored shrug, as if the project was beneath her. It was the kind of answer that didn't just insult Warner Brothers, it insulted fans. Because if the actress doesn't care, why should the audience? And that's where Rachel Zegler's persona became a problem.
Ooh, you know this Rachel Zegler, do you remember her Disney's Snow White? Total train.
Not because she was too opinionated, not because she was too political, but because her attitude, her tone, her delivery, her defensiveness turned every platform into a soapbox. And the longer she talked, the more people tuned out. She didn't just alienate her critics, she started to alienate her supporters too. At first, the backlash was just online. Angry tweets, disappointed fans, YouTube comment sections overflowing with criticism. But what started as noise on the internet eventually echoed where it really hurt. Inside Hollywood's boardrooms. And the silence was deafening. The same industry that had once tripped over itself to crown Rachel Zegler.
Picture a Broadway actress who issued a post saying F by.
The next big thing began pulling back. Not with statements, not with headlines, but with distance. It began subtly. No new projects announced, no glowing variety covers, no big studio deals rolling in. PR reps who once pitched her as the future were suddenly quiet. Agents weren't leaking casting rumors. Studio insiders started using words like risky and unpredictable when her name came up. And in Hollywood, those aren't labels. They're red flags. Even Spielberg's production company, the same team that had discovered Rachel, nurtured her, and launched her, began fading from the picture.
Rachel Zegler isn't going to tuck her tail and hide. The West Side Story star responded to the backlash she is receiving for the Snow White.
They didn't issue a press release. They didn't defend her publicly. They just stopped mentioning her. Slowly. Strategically. Like erasing a name from a resume. Why? Because in the industry, image is everything. And Rachel's image wasn't just damaged, it was radioactive. Her social media controversies weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern. Her interviews didn't just flop, they went viral for all the wrong reasons. She wasn't just a risky bet. She was becoming the face of what not to do with your career. And behind the scenes, executives were frustrated. According to insider reports, Disney's PR team was blindsided by her Free Palestine post.
Rachel Zegler shocked fans with a health scare on stage, but her quick recovery is just one chapter in her rapid rise to fame and fortune. As of
dropped right in the middle of a multi-million-dollar Snow White trailer campaign. Not only was it unexpected, but it completely derailed their press strategy. According to leaks, Rachel had been explicitly told to avoid politically charged content during the film's rollout. She ignored it. And in doing so, she hijacked a campaign Disney had spent months and millions orchestrating. That wasn't bold, that was defiant. And the studios took note. Rachel had made it clear she wasn't just going to speak her mind. She was going to do it her way, no matter what. And while that might sound like artistic integrity, to a studio spending hundreds of millions on a film, that's called instability.
I watched it once, and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures.
Suddenly, casting directors started looking elsewhere. Projects that were once perfect for Rachel began circling other names. Even shows she was attached to, like Evita, became harder to sell. Industry blogs hinted that other stage productions were passing on her. Not because she lacked talent, but because she came with baggage. Because in Hollywood, the equation is simple. If your name starts costing money instead of making it, your phone stops ringing. And it did. Rachel Zegler went from everywhere to nowhere. No Marvel announcement, no Netflix miniseries, no surprise streaming deals. Just echoes of a hype train that had completely derailed.
They made a movie about 10 years ago called Snow White and the Huntsman, and they had dwarves in them, but they weren't dwarves. They were tall guys that they CG.
And what made it worse? She kept talking. She blamed toxic internet culture for the Snow White backlash. She said the public had misunderstood her intentions. She insisted she was choosing joy and positivity, even as her online presence grew more defensive, more erratic, and more isolated. She couldn't stop the fall because she refused to admit there even was one. And Hollywood, unforgiving, brutal, and always looking for the next star, moved on. No drama, no headlines, just a quiet decision in room after room. Let's go with someone else. That's the part no one talks about.
And if you remember, Rachel Zegler trashed the original and went on some woke rant
when the spotlight doesn't dim all at once, but slowly starts fading until you realize no one's watching anymore. Rachel Zegler didn't just lose the audience. She lost the industry. In the beginning, Rachel Zegler had everything: the director, the spotlight, the crown. But now, with the studios retreating, the fans disengaged, and the critics divided, she's left with something far more chilling than controversy: emptiness. No stage, no screen, no crowd, and just a name that used to open doors and now sends rooms into awkward silence. She's become the rarest thing in show business, a star without a stage. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit: Hollywood can handle scandal. It can survive outrage.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's for dwarfs.
We got Wee Man out. Wee Man from...
It can even weather failure, but it cannot survive irrelevance. And for Rachel, that's where the path has led. Her theater debut fizzled, her blockbuster flopped. Her political takes alienated half her audience, and her own performances pushed away the rest. Even when she tried to pivot to vulnerability, talking about anxiety, burnout, therapy, it felt too late. Not because those struggles weren't real, but because they came after too many burned bridges. It's hard to ask for empathy when you've spent 2 years talking down to the people whose support you now desperately need. And that's the paradox Rachel finds herself in now.
Online, fans, critics, even former Disney loyalists turned on the movie instantly.
No longer 1937.
Her voice, once hailed as golden, now echoes into rooms that no longer care to listen. Her name, once written in lights, is now the asterisk in box office reports and theater reviews. The promise of a generation, the girl who was supposed to carry the future of Disney, musical theater, and inclusive storytelling, has become a cautionary tale. But what makes this even more painful isn't how fast she fell. It's how preventable it all was. There was no scandal, no lawsuit, no crime, no exposed secret. Rachel Zegler didn't implode because of something done to her. She imploded because of something she did to herself. a slow, steady erosion of goodwill through tone.
To everyone who hates when I win, I can only hope that despite my flaws, that at every premiere and every
timing and total disconnect from the people she once inspired. And now the silence is louder than any trending hashtag. Studios are casting new stars. TikTok has moved on. The interviews are no longer booked. The press junkets have no seat for her. And the fans? They've stopped fighting. They've stopped defending. They've stopped caring. Because when no one's angry anymore, it means they've let go. And in Hollywood, that's the real end. Rachel Zegler once stood at the center of it all. Now she stands in the shadow of her own spotlight, still speaking, still posting, still trying to be heard, but with no stage left to stand on.
Thanks a lot, you idiot. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Thanks a lot. Thanks to you, my child.
Rachel Zegler's story isn't just about a failed movie or a canceled performance. It's about what happens when talent isn't enough. It's about how quickly the spotlight can become a magnifying glass, and how unfiltered authenticity can backfire when it isn't paired with humility. Because Rachel wasn't just a rising star, she was the star. Handpicked, fast-tracked. She had the voice, the look, the legacy roles. The industry bent over backwards to make her work. And yet, she still lost the room. Not because of a single misstep, but because she never listened. This wasn't a scandal that spiraled out of control. It was a pattern of disregard.
Please. It's hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can...
Press interviews that came off as smug, quotes that felt insulting, and a tone that suggested audiences were beneath her. And in the end, that's what people reacted to. Not just her politics, not just her opinions, but the way she carried herself through it all. Because the truth is, fans don't expect perfection. They expect connection. And Rachel Zegler, for all her vocal talent and camera-ready presence, never made them feel like she was with them. She was always above them, until the roles stopped coming, until the theaters stopped filling, until the silence started speaking louder than any of her interviews. And that's what we're really watching here.
About like 6 months away from release, and no footage had been seen, and I actually got a really glowing...
Not just a career unraveling, but a moment in culture, a reminder that in the age of social media, every word is a brand, every post is a performance, and every moment in front of the camera is either building trust or burning it. Rachel Zegler didn't lose because she was outspoken. She lost because she spoke only for herself and never paused to ask if anyone else was still listening. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real cautionary tale. Because fame isn't built on talent alone. It's built on grace, on awareness, on the quiet moments between the headlines where character is revealed. Rachel had the stage, she had the platform, and when the lights were brightest,
trying to promote the movie, would this make you want to go watch the movie when she's starring in it and she's the main character?
These changes, they say,
she lit the match. This wasn't a fall from grace, it was a slow motion self-destruction. One post, one quote, one shrug at a time. And when the curtain finally closed, it wasn't booze that followed. It was something far worse. Silence. In the end, Rachel Zegler didn't fall because she lacked talent. She fell because she underestimated the people watching. Hollywood gave her the platform, the press gave her the microphone. And for a moment, the world was ready to listen. But instead of building a bridge, she burned one. And not out of malice, but out of something worse. Disconnection. She talked and talked, but never heard the silence that followed.
Of poor optics, tone-deaf interviews, and questionable choices, both on and off stage. Her attempts to modern...
What we witnessed wasn't just a bad rollout or a tough crowd. It was a complete collapse of connection. And in an industry built on perception, that's the one thing you can't afford to lose. So maybe the real lesson here isn't about Snow White or Evita or viral quotes. Maybe it's this. You don't get to keep the spotlight just because you stood in it once. You have to earn it, again and again and again. Because in the age of instant backlash and infinite voices, fame isn't about how loud you speak. It's about who still wants to listen.